Hello guys, welcome back on track. Happy World English Language Day. Today we want to look at another important topic, which is conditional clauses. Conditional clauses. Conditional clauses. These are clauses that has to do with probability. Conditional clauses have to do with probability. You will identify a conditional clauses by looking for the followings in a statement or a sentence. If you come across a sentence with if, words like unless, words like provided that, words like in case. If you come across any of these items on the whiteboard, such a sentence, if you come across any of this item in a statement or in a sentence, that particular expression is a typical example of what we refer to as conditional clauses. I believe you are following. When we are dealing with conditional clauses, there are two kinds or there are two forms of conditional clauses. One, we have what we refer to as real condition. And secondly, we have what we call unreal condition. When we are dealing with real condition, a real condition is a situation whereby the action being described in a sentence is practicable or has happened. If an action is to be referred to as a real condition, definitely that particular action in that expression should be what is practicable or has happened. If that is the case, and examiner, most especially in WAEC, JAMB, NECO, among other examination, the examiner wants to test the students whether they can identify verbs, particularly in that particular sentence. And many a time, the question will be in two forms. There will be two clauses in that particular expression. Look at this, for example. If I meet you, I will beat you. If you look at this first sentence, we have, this is clause 1. Why this is clause 2. Many a time in JAMB, many a time in WAEC, the examiner may give you the first verb and the examiner may at the same time omit the second verb. If you are to determine if a particular clause, if a particular statement is a real condition, just like I said earlier, that a real condition has to do with actions that is practicable, actions that are practicable, and or actions that has happened. If I meet you, I will beat you. Meet here is a present verb. The past form is met. Will here at the same time is a present modal auxiliary verb. The past form is would. This shows that this particular expression here, if I meet you, I will beat you, it is possible if the subject of the sentence meets a particular person. That particular subject should be able to beat or defeat that particular person. Therefore, the verb in the two clauses are in the present tense. This is a typical example of a real condition. A real condition has to do with actions that is practicable or actions that has happened. And what you should be mindful of in this situation is the verbs. You can be given the first verb and you'll be asked to look for the other verb. That is a real condition. For unreal condition, unreal conditions are conditions that are not practicable and that are unlikely to happen. Events that are being talked about in unreal condition is unlikely to happen. It is subjunctive in nature. In that situation, the verb in unreal condition is expected to be in the past form. For example, if I went to the cinema, I would return early. If I went to the cinema, clause 1, I would return early. Clause 2. Here we have what? Went. Here we have would. The present form here is come. I would return early. The present form of this modal auxiliary verb is will. Therefore, this particular event being talked about in the second example below is a typical example of an unreal condition. If I went to the cinema, I would return early. This event shows that I did not went to the cinema. That event being talked about here is unlikely to happen. If I went, had it been I went to that cinema, I would return early. Whereas I did not go there. I did not went there. This shows that this particular condition here is an unreal condition. That is on one hand. On the other hand, sometimes an examiner will want a candidate to interpret sentences under conditional clauses. In such situation, you may have a sentence of this form: had she asked me earlier, I might have employed him. Many a time you come across a question of this form: had she asked me earlier, I might have employed him. Had she asked me earlier, I might have employed him. You have option like I did not employ him. B, I did employ him. C, I did not employ her. D, I did employ him. This should be her. So what the examiner expects from learners or students is to interpret this particular sentence. Had she asked me earlier? Had she asked me earlier? If she had asked me earlier, I might have employed him. One thing is, you should be able to determine if this particular expression here is a real condition or unreal condition. What we have here is, had she asked me earlier, I might have employed him. This sentence on the whiteboard is a typical example of unreal condition. But the unreal condition here is coming in another dimension. where a candidate is expected to interpret that particular expressions, that particular statement being highlighted in any form of examination. Therefore, as she asked me earlier, I might have employed him. This shows that I want to give a kind of a vivid or logical explanation to what this sentence entails. As she asked me earlier, I might have employed him. Probably the subject of this sentence has a friend, and the friend has a brother. Therefore, the brother is a graduate, and the brother asked the sister to inform her friend that if there is a need for a particular vacant position in our organization, he will be interested in working. Therefore, the friend replied with, she asked me earlier, had he been, she has asked me probably before now, I might have been able to employ him. That shows that that particular person did not inform the person earlier. Therefore, that event there is an unreal, because the event that is being talked about there has not happened and is unlikely to. That is the case. If you have an expression as she asked me earlier, I might have employed him. I did not employ him. I did employ him. I did not employ her. I did employ her. The answer here is I did not employ him, because we have an unreal condition, and definitely that particular event here has not materialized. Because the subject of the sentence did not employ this particular person. Therefore, the appropriate answer here is I did not employ him. So far, I have been able to unravel what conditional sentences are and what you should be mindful of in conditional sentences. If you come across words like if, unless, provided that, in case, among other words, definitely that particular expression is a conditional clauses, and there are two forms. A conditional clauses could be real as well as unreal. Real condition has to do with actions that are practicable or actions that has happened. In that situation, the verb in the two clauses should be in the present tense. And if it is unreal conditions, or real conditions has to do with actions that are unlikely to happen. In unreal conditions, the verb should always be in the past form. Having unraveled this, I will highlight some questions on the whiteboard, and we will tackle the question in line with the rules of unreal and unreal conditions. So some may be looking at this question as, I'm not a JAMB student, I am not a candidate for WAEC, I am not a candidate for NECO. But beyond those who are JAMBites, the WAEC candidates, NECO candidates, English language is a language that every sane human being should be proficient in. At least we should be able to communicate with the language efficiently, as a language of instruction, as a language of education, as a language of upward mobility. Therefore, beyond a person sitting for an examination, we should be able to use the language efficiently, whether it's as it deals with conditional clauses or not. When you look at this expression on the whiteboard, had she told me dash, had she told me I dash you, would have stopped, will have stopped, would stopped, must have stopped. If the police had not intervened quickly, the suspected thief dashed by the mob. We have options A to D. If I had heard the news earlier, I dashed stayed at home, with four options. And lastly, we have if I dash known, I dash not have come. The first thing we'll determine in the sentences on the whiteboard, in the questions on the whiteboard, is first, we want to determine if those expressions are conditional clauses? And if they are conditional clauses, are they real conditions or unreal conditions? So we forge ahead now. Question 1. Had she told me earlier, I dash you. This type of expression here, we have had she told me. In the first clause here, what we have is told. I told you earlier that you should be mindful of the verb in the first clause. Sometimes the first clause you'll have the verb, and the clause in the second, the verb in the second clause will be omitted. Sometimes the clause in the first expression will be omitted, and you'll have the verb in the second clause. Therefore, here we have had she told me. Told here is a past tense. The present form is tell. This shows that this particular expression here is an unreal condition. Therefore, the verb that must complete this particular expression here, this particular clause here, should be in the past tense. Here we have will have stopped. Will here is a present verb, and we have here the helping verb, anomalous verb. Here we have would have stopped. Here we have would stop. Here we have must have stopped. The appropriate answer to this expression is B. Had she told me, I would have stopped you. Had she told me, I would have stopped you. Here we have would. Here we have will. Here we have will stop you. Will stop you. The verb after this should also be in the past and not will stop. It should be what? Will have stopped, and not will have stopped, not must have stopped, and not would stop. The appropriate answer here is B. Would have stopped. That is for question 1. Question 2. If the police had not intervened quickly, the suspected thief dashed by the mob. Also, we should be able to determine if the particular expression here is a real condition or unreal condition. Looking at the sentence, if the police had not intervened, the verb here is intervened. Intervened. Therefore, this shows that this particular condition here is also a typical example of what? An unreal condition. Therefore, the verb that is appropriate to complete the second clause should also be in the past form. Here we have would be killed, will have been killed, would have been killed, will be killed. The first option was if the police had not intervened quickly, the suspected thief would be killed by the mob. This would be killed here shows if we fill the option with this, the answer there is not appropriate. 2. Will have been killed. The verb here shows that we cannot have a present verb to complete the clause. The first verb we have in the first clause should be the same verb we should have in the second clause. Would have been killed. Here we have would. We have anomalous verb, which is an helping verb here, and when we have an anomalous verb, it should always be followed by a past participle verb. Therefore, would have been killed is the right answer to fill into this vacuum. If the police had not intervened quickly, the suspected thief would have been killed by the mob. Would have been killed by the mob here shows that the second clause and the first clause has to do with events that are unreal, events that events that are unlikely to happen. The event being talked about has not materialized. Number 3. If I had heard the news earlier, I stayed at home. If I had heard the news earlier, I stayed at home. Would have stayed at home, will have stayed at home, will not have stayed at home, would not have stayed at home. I'll start with would have. Here we have a modal auxiliary verb in the past form, and an helping verb. Here we have a present modal auxiliary verb with another helping verb. Here we have a present modal auxiliary verb with negator not, and then another helping verb. And here we have a past tense modal auxiliary verb would with a negator and an anomalous verb. Therefore, if I had heard the news earlier, if I had heard this particular event being talked about here is the verb in this sentence rather is a past tense. Is what? A past tense. If I had. If you have any sentence whatsoever where you have if I had, automatically that expression is an unreal condition. Had is the past form of both as and have, and we said that unreal events, the verb in unreal events must always be in the past tense. So if you have if I had, automatically that expression is an unreal condition. If I had heard the news earlier, I would have stayed at home. And finally, we have if I dash known, I dash not have come. There is something wrong with this expression. There is something wrong with this expression. Many a time it is only one verb that you will be asked to look for the answer, not the two verb. If I dash known, I would not have come. Have, had, has, and a will. If you look at the second clause, what we have here is would. Would here indicates that this particular event being talked about also is a past verb, modal auxiliary verb in the past form, as well as being a what? An unreal condition. I would not have come. An unreal condition. Therefore, the verb that must complete this expression here should also be a past tense. Therefore, have here is the present tense. Had here is the past tense. As here is also a present tense for singular. Have a present tense in the plural form. Had the past tense of both as and have. And here we have will, a present modal auxiliary. Therefore, the appropriate answer should be if I had known, I would not have come. One simple logic to unravel questions under conditional clauses is you should be able to identify in that sentence the verb. Secondly, having identified the verb, you should be able to identify also whether that particular expression is a real or unreal condition. By identifying the verb in that sentence, you can easily determine if it is a real condition or an unreal condition. By that, you can have a very beautiful, encouraging scores as far as questions under conditional clauses are concerned, if you follow the rules that govern that particular expression. Thank you for your time. Don't forget to share, like, as well as comment. If you find any topic very difficult for you to understand, do not hesitate to comment such topic under the comment box, and I will definitely attend to such question. Thank you and God bless.